namaskar, friends, and now we are meeting again for this next class. And I intend to discuss Anita Nair's Lessons in Forgetting, yet another very important work when we discuss the fiction of Indian diaspora. Anita Nair, born in 1966 in India, is a prominent Indian novelist known for her exploration of female identity, emotional complexity, and social dynamics within contemporary Indian context. Uh, she is writing primarily in English and she has contributed significantly to Indian literature through both fiction and non fiction, and her works are widely read both in India and internationally. Many of her works have been translated in several international languages as well. So, if we talk about her famous works, we can mention some of them: A Better Man, Mistress, Lessons in Forgetting, Keeper of the Light, Ladies Coupe. That is another very important novel by her, which talks about Akhila, a 45-year-old single woman who takes a train journey in a ladies only compartment and hears the life stories of her co passengers. And this particular novel talks about the themes of female agency, marriage, sexuality, solitude, and self discovery. Better Man, The Better Man was her debut novel, which was set in Kerala, in a Kerala village. It follows Mukundan, a middle aged man who returns to his ancestral home and struggles to define himself against his dominating father. So it talks about male identity, emotional repression, redemption, and small town life. So we find that she was honored by the Kerala Sahitya Academy for her contribution to literature and culture. And the novel Lessons in Forgetting, which we are going to discuss in this class, is a contemporary novel that explores the themes of personal loss, resilience, search for truth, and redemption. And of all her novels, why have I settled to Lessons in Forgetting is that because this novel has lot of themes of diaspora. So this novel was published in 2010, and the setting of the novel is contemporary India, primarily Bangalore and coastal Tamil Nadu. And if we look at this novel, this narrative is centered around two main characters, Meera and Professor J. Krishnamurthy. And their lives intersect as grapple with uh, they each grapple with their own crisis. So they both have background before coming together, and so we find that it's a story of two emotionally wounded individuals, both dealing with the aftermath of personal tragedies. Their lives intersect in Bangalore, leading them to a shared journey of healing, self discovery, and confronting painful truths. So, the novel intricately weaves together themes of loss, memory, family, gender violence, and the ability to move forward. As I said, the two most important characters in this novel are J. Krishnamurthy, popularly known as Jack. He is a cyclone expert, a storm tracker, a professor who returns to India from the US to uncover the mystery behind the traumatic event that left his teenage daughter brain damaged. He is rational, brooding, and emotionally distant. On the other hand, the other character, Meera, she is a seemingly perfect socialite and cookbook author whose life unravels when her wealthy husband suddenly abandons her and their children. She is forced to confront her illusions and rediscover her independence. And that is when, she joins Jack as his uh, assistant. Smriti is yet another very important character. Um, she's Jack's daughter, a college student who suffers a mysterious accident while on a research project in Tamil Nadu, leaving her mentally and physically incapacitated. She becomes the emotional heart of the mystery in this particular novel. If we talk about the novel, the first story in the book is that of Meera. Goose Girl Meera, explained in the book, is a high society wife and a writer of cookery and social etiquette books. She lives in a plush ancestral house called the Lilac House with her husband Giri, son Nikhil, mother Saru, and her grandmother Lily. Her daughter Nayantara lives away from home due to her studies. Everything seems to be going really well for Meera until she attends a high society party with her husband and son. Halfway through the party, her husband disappears, and she later learns that he has actually left her and their kids. Suddenly, her uh, world is topsy turvy. She is left to fend for herself and her family and the house, and so she becomes defenseless. Well, the second story is that of Jack or J. Krishnamurti, a renowned expert on cyclones who comes back to India for good in the search of something. A divorce, a divorcee in US, he is keen on finding out what happened to Smriti, his 19-year-old daughter, who lies comatose after going through a freak accident in a village in South India. His idea is to trace his daughter's last few days in uh, Minjikapuram, the place where he grew up. So, two main characters of the novel, Mira and Jack, undergo many hurdles in their lives separately. When they meet each other, they try to find solutions to their problems and find solace in one another's arms by forgiving the people who have made their lives miserable. So, we find that Jack returns to India after Smithy's accident, consumed by guilt and confusion, and he believes her journey was not accidental and is determined to investigate what really happened during her field work in a coastal town. Mira, as I said, is left shattered after her husband Giri leaves her without explanation. Her comfortable upper class life collapses and she takes a job as Jack's assistant, handling his correspondence and research logistics. Um, as Jack digs deeper, he uncovers Smriti's activism. She was researching gender based violence and caste related operation in small towns, and Smriti had challenged local norms and was trying to expose a case involving sexual assault and social injustice. Her accident appears increasingly linked to a deliberate attempt to silence her. Mira too is forced to revisit her past, her marriage, her suppressed ambitions, and the compromises she made for the sake of appearances. She also discovers her identity beyond being a wife and mother. Jack travels to Minjikapuram, the town where Smriti's accident occurred. He finds a wall of silence. The locals are evasive, and the truth is buried under fear, patriarchy, and complicity. He eventually uncovers the shocking truth that Smriti was attacked by a group of young men after she tried to intervene in a case of gang rape. The assailants are sons of powerful families in the area. Jack must decide between seeking legal justice or learning to let go to preserve what's left of his daughter's dignity and his own sanity. Mira gradually rebuilds her life. She becomes stronger, more self reliant, and aware of the shallow foundations her old life was built on. Her bond with Jack becomes deeper, not romantic, but based on mutual empathy and shared pain. Their companionship offers each of them a lifeline toward emotional renewal. So, we find that the novel explores the themes of feminism, forgetting, man woman relationship, and some of the diasporic themes such as displacement and homecoming. So, if we look at the life of Jack, he migrated to US at the age of 22 to escape his ignominious childhood marred by the sudden desertion from his father, and his eagerness to get away from his perpetual humiliation of being abandoned by his father, and later his mother takes him to US, where he works his way to become Professor Jack, the interpreter of cyclones. So, this unusual journey in his life forces him to migrate from India to US in search of better opportunities and a new identity, because his identity in India is marred by certain taboo, being the abandoned uh, child of his parents. First, the father leaves him, and then his mother also leaves him. And so, but then, despite this adversity, he goes to America, studies, and becomes an expert in cyclone studies. In America, he finds a new world where the shadows of his childhood are unable to haunt him, a world where he could create his own identity detached from his past, as Dr. Kausal observes. With a desperate urge to sever himself from his troubled past, Jack devotes his time to get accepted with the new culture, but in his pursuit, his new identity, his past remains deeply embedded in his subconscious mind. A fact that, all these writers, uh, always accept that despite the best of your efforts, you can still not completely assimilate in the foreign culture or the host culture, because uh, past is what your present is made of, and it is so difficult to do away with your past, although that past sometimes may be traumatic. So Jack forever suffers from nostalgia. His nostalgia is largely devoid of pain, as he selectively forgets distressing memories while crafting a new identity. His relationship and eventual marriage to Nina, a Tamilian from Chennai, can be seen as a deliberate attempt to establish a sense of belonging in a foreign land. So he does not marry a white or black woman, rather, he prefers a fellow Indian, Nina, believing that this will bring closer to his own Indian heritage. So he even names his daughters Smriti and Shruti, as that was all he had of his imaginary homeland. Smriti is memory, and Shruti, what you hear. So, in a state of introspection, he recalls, and I quote, Nina and I could not at first forget home. We lived in the States, our bodies did, that is, but our minds sought the India as we had left behind. That was what brought us together, bound us, and so, when she was born, we decided to name her Smriti, what was remembered. So, he tells us about the reason behind, naming his daughter Smriti, and so symbolically later on we find how Smriti is lying motionless in the hospital bed, and that shows the hurt memories of the past that have uh, come to haunt the life of Jack. So he remains caught in a state of dual yearning, unable to purge the presence of India from his inner world, even after many years of living in exile. So Nina best expresses his fragmented identity when she retorts to him by saying, and Nina does not really approve of his nostalgia, although initially they both find themselves on the same platform, but later on the bickering occurs because of their diverging paths. And in this line, let's see, well, Kicha, if you love India so much, why don't you go back? Look at yourself and the ridiculous lengths you go to. The leaky tap in the garden so you can hear it drip because it reminds you of the kitchen tap in the house you grew up in. The birds sit in the patio that you won't and will not let me hose away because it reminds you of the backyard in that house. So Nina finds it ridiculous that, you know, he even goes to the extent of artificially creating an environment within his house in US that reminds him of his childhood back in India. So Jack and Nina, who were drawn to each other because of their common love for India, are unable to balance between the new and the old homeland. Their ambitious and demanding life with fragmented memories of India and its rich culture begins to fade, and they gradually move towards accepting what is called hyphenated identity. Like her father, Smriti also loves India, and that is why she rejects the opportunity to study in America and enroll in India for her study. For Smriti, India had her roots. She had heard uncountable stories from Papa Jack about India and Minjikapuram. Smriti's spontaneous decision to pursue higher education in India surprises Nina, but Jack embraces it, viewing it as her attempt to reconnect with their roots, homeland, and shared past. However, she appears as a misfit, a displaced person in the Indian society where she had to spell out to her friends, "You are not my boyfriend, you are my friend. Why do you have to be like all Indian boys I meet? Can't we just be friends? You, Matthew, Rishi, and I've been out with Rishi too. So what?" So, Smriti finds it difficult, although she comes to India in search of her roots, but she has been raised in America and she takes life differently. And so, when she meets people here and tries to make friends with male students, she finds that they take it wrongly as, her infatuation for them, and that's why she finds it very difficult, and she finds that she is a misfit although she is an Indian. So the difference between her intention and her behavior leads to a number of doubts as she came to India to blend with her people and her culture with real India, but in a tank top and no bra, Tamil with an accent and studs pierced in various parts of her body, makes her a displaced individual and hinders her process of finding roots. So, by look of it, she is different, although she is an Indian, and that is the reason she finds that all her efforts to align with India and Indian culture falls flat and proves futile. Later, the journey of Smriti takes a tragic turn when she visits Minjikapuram. There, she gets to know about the mass abortion or rampant female feticide in the village, which is again very difficult for her to digest because she comes from a world where no such distinction is made based on the gender of a fetus. So she decides to go ahead and collect proof to uncover the illegal killing. Her undeterred, single handed plan to expose the racket leads to her bone chilling gang rape on the seashore, followed by an accident which leaves her in a near death condition. So we find that, she tries to set the wrongs right in India, but she does not know that this is a different society, and that's why she falls prey to this. The law, the protection that is there in the US is not found here, and so she is vulnerable and ultimately suffers for her gutsy take on an injustice meted out to women in India. After this tragic incident, Jack returns to India in order to seek justice. However, his return home after a long duration becomes a journey full of torture. He begins this quest to find the genesis of her screams, the source of that terror, but ends up reliving his own disturbing past and experiencing displacement in his homeland, just like Smriti had. So, we find that for people like Jack, going back to their roots is a traumatic experience rather than soothing. It further, uh, gives them pain and suffering. So, Jack's past experience and his disillusionment after his parents' separation comes back to his mind as he walks the lanes of the sleepy village of Minjikapuram searching for answers. He recalls how the sense of security evaded him when his family broke, and realizes the same experience had alienated his daughter and had changed their lives forever. Even her quest to find answers in India is thwarted by her hyphenated identity. So, highlighting the journey of Meera and Jack, the novel concludes with an emphasis on forgiveness and the ideal that forgetting, letting go of pain and trauma is sometimes necessary for survival and healing. So, the prominent themes in this novel that really connect to the life of diaspora, and that final message all of us know is ultimately uh, the philosophy of the author, that any new journey is fraught with lacerations, and in order to survive, people must try to forget their painful past. Otherwise, this will certainly be detrimental to their survival. Let us recall one of such lines in Jasmine by Bharati Mukherjee, where Lillian Gordon, that kind Quaker lady who rescued Jasmine, tells her, um, be wary of your, let the past, I don't recall those lines exactly, but the idea is, uh, let not your past deform you, you know so that is what seems to be applicable here as well. So we find that the novel abounds with themes of memory and forgetting, and it mediates on how people cope with trauma, what they choose to remember, and what they must forget to survive. And this happens in the lives of both Mira and Jack. Gender violence and silence. Smriti's story is a powerful indictment of rape culture, small town misogyny, and the social pressure to suppress female voices. Parental guilt, in the case of Jack, that is quite evident. His journey is about reconciling with his own failures as a father and trying to make amends, because he is the one who supported Smriti when she decided to go back to India, despite having a very painful past in India and traumatic memories of India. He still was hopeful that his daughter will go to India and will find her roots. Ultimately, this did not prove as he expected, and his uh, daughter also suffered the same kind of trauma and violence in her homeland. And that is why Jack feels parental guilt. Reinvention and resilience. As we look at the story of Mira, we find how she liberates herself, how she remakes herself when her husband leaves her, and she rediscovers the purpose of her life and redefines her self-worth. There is also an intersection of personal and political in the novel, as the novel connects private traumas to systemic injustice, showing how personal pain is often rooted in broader social issues. In India, the story is told in third person, altering between Jack and Mira's perspectives, uh, interspersed with memories, letters, and Smriti's journal entries, giving voice to the silent victim at the heart of the story. So, Nair's prose in this novel is lyrical and emotionally sharp, uh, blending introspection with social critique. If we look at these lines, they are the most prominent ones and underline the focus of the novel. What the eye does not see, the heart does not grieve over. A recurring idea in the novel, especially tied to Jack's initial detachment and his later guilt, it reflects the human tendency to avoid uncomfortable truths. So while in the US, he always tries to suppress the traumatic past he has suffered. Another very important line is, sometimes forgetting is the only way to survive. And probably these are the punch lines, and that is why this novel is titled Lessons in Forgetting. So, this quote captures the novel's central theme, forgetting not as eraser but as a form of emotional survival. Both Jack and Mira must learn what to hold on and what to let go in order to survive. And that's why there is no point, living in a past that makes you, weak and vulnerable. And that is why both Jack and Mira must forget their traumatic past to rebuild their life and to survive. You can't rewrite what is past, but you can always start a new chapter. So the novel has a clear cut mandate that while what happened in past cannot be undone, but we can always look at the future and start a new chapter in life. So this turns out to be one of the most important diasporic messages, that people in diaspora would always suffer traumatic experiences. If they continue to bother about them, probably they will not be able to reshape their lives and survive. So, the novelist Anita Nair seems to be giving a clear message that whatever may be your past trauma, you need to forget that in order to reorganize yourself, refashion yourself, and carve out a new life out of this. So, if we look at this novel, we find that Lessons in Forgetting is a powerful, sobering novel about the complex paths to healing after devastating personal loss, as it happens in the case of Jack and Mira. It is also a critique of social injustice and gender inequality, as we find in the story told through intimate character stories. Anita Nair sensitively explores the idea that sometimes the only way to live is to forget, not to erase the past, but to stop letting it define the future. So, if we look at these people, they are not simply characters, there are symbolic meanings attached to what they do and what they don't do. So, cyclones, in the novel, Jack is defined as a man who follows logic and control, someone who is used to dealing with natural phenomenon like cyclones, unpredictable yet measurable. And when his daughter Smriti becomes mentally incapacitated after a mysterious incident, his world of rationality collapses and he shifts from being an emotionally disengaged academic to a grieving, guilt driven father, desperate for answers and redemption. So, his journey to uncover the truth is also an inward one. He must confront his emotional failures as a parent, his ignorance of Smriti's values, and the injustice she suffered. And by the end, he evolves not into someone fully healed, but someone who understands the limits of knowledge and the necessity of acceptance. So, what we find in his story is the clash between logic and emotion, the struggle to let go of the past without betraying it. If we look at Meera, who is a former socialite and cookbook author, and currently an assistant of uh, Jack, she is introduced as a woman whose identity was built around her role as a perfect wife, mother, and hostess. Her self worth was externally validated through her husband's success. When her husband Giri suddenly leaves, she is thrown into emotional and financial disarray, and she loses her status and is forced to fend for herself. She begins working for Jack, and through this professional engagement, starts a parallel journey of self reclamation and gradually sets societal expectations and rediscovers her voice, learning to value herself not for how others see her, but for her resilience and individuality. So, her evolution is subtler compared to that of Jack, but equally powerful. It is a quiet assertion of agency. So, cyclone, as I said, Jack is an expert of cyclones, and it's a symbolic extension of his personality as well, dealing with the storms that can be predicted, tracked, and managed. However, the emotional and social storms he faces, especially Smriti's tragedy, are unpredictable and out of control. So, cyclones also reflect the disruptive force in his life, forcing him to rebuild. Cookbook and recipe, another symbol taking from the story of Mira. It symbolizes the domestic uh, mold Mira was expected to fit into, a perfect woman who nourishes others. As she shifts away from writing recipes to discovering herself, it marks her transition from performance to authenticity. And again, Smriti's silence is also symbolic. Her inability to speak becomes a haunting metaphor for silencing of women's voices, especially when they challenge power structures. Her condition forces others to speak for her, raising questions about who controls the narrative and how truth is recovered. So, friends, it turns out to be uh, a very powerful narrative dealing with identity, tradition, roots, and rootlessness, and the need to balance life. And the message seems to be loud and clear: that while we cannot completely do away with our past, which keeps on haunting us, we can still forget that traumatic past to lead a peaceful life. So, Anita Nair, through the story of Jack and Mira, does not favor completely doing away with the past, but she certainly sends us a message that, you know, there is no point clinging to a past which hinders our present. So, we must also learn what to remember and what to forget in order to survive better. So, uh, these are the references, friends, and thank you very much for your company once again. In the next class, we'll be taking up yet another novel by another diasporic writer. My effort is to bring disparate narratives, um, so that you can look at the different phases, uh, different phases of diaspora, and experience the different lenses through which the diasporic experience has been looked at. So, thank you very much for your company, and take good care of yourself. We'll meet again. Thank you.